Morning. So ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, it is real estate month here at Real Life Trading. And so far this month, we've already reached out to a few real estate professionals, just kind of ask their opinion on things, get their questions. And I'm right now reaching out to a very good friend of mine, an incredibly unique individual, someone who has a lot of insight on many different various topics, but real estate is going to be one of them. I'm going to introduce to you all Seth Mosley. Seth, how are you doing?
How you doing, my friend? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, dude, you sound so good right now.
Well, you sound even better, my friend.
All right. That's good news. That's good news. So
Always sound good.
I'm going to ask you all kinds of real estate questions today, Seth.
Yes, sir.
Another piece of information that Seth, and you can tell me all the websites that you need me to promote and just talk about, but this is one. I really do like this particular one, being in Nashville, fullcirclemusic.com. This is Seth right here. So if you're into the music world and music landscape, you definitely need to connect with this particular project and website. Some incredible information and great YouTube content. But if anyone here has questions about real estate, Seth also runs a seminar presentation that we do every single month here in Nashville. So Seth, you just want to tell everyone a little bit about music and money and how that got started?
Yes, I'm actually pasting a link in the chat. It's just mminvestorsgroup.com in case you want to pull it up.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's a group that me and Michael Gomez started a few years ago. Michael's also a broker in town, one of the top Latino brokers in the United States, actually. It's kind of a fun story in and of itself. But we started this group about 4 years ago, really because I'm in the music business, which for any of you who don't understand how that works, it's very similar to like athletics or really a lot of small businesses where there's a lot of volatility. It's a lot of up and down. You may have a great year and then the next year you may have nothing. So yeah, we get questions. Like I early on decided to start investing in real estate for the cash flow of it, and really just to sort of even you out on those down years. I never really liked the idea of throwing all my money into, mutual funds and just letting a financial advisor kind of steer me whichever way the wind would blow. And, there's no really meaningful cash flow involved. So real estate was kind of the route we decided to go. We read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, kind of had the whole mind-blowing experience from that. And so started investing in real estate, and I would just get friends asking me about it, and had enough friends ask me that one day I was like, well, why don't we just meet up at a coffee shop and I'll just share with you what I know, which at the time wasn't a whole lot, but I had a few rental properties in my portfolio and was making good cash flow on those. And just started answering questions and just sharing my experience, and so that's evolved into a group that's much beyond just music industry folks, although we do still have a lot of artists and managers and publishers and songwriters and musicians showing up. Mm-hmm. It's sort of evolved way beyond that to, so just really the commonality is we're all kind of entrepreneurial, small business owners, and really just have the investor mindset would be the main thing. So we meet once a month. It's usually the first Wednesday of every month. This next month is an exception because we made an exception when we get a really special guest. So we've got Brandon Turner, who is the host of the #1 worldwide real estate podcast, Bigger Pockets. He's coming to be with us Wednesday, October 9th. We always meet 8 to 10 a.m. We meet in the Franklin Factory. If you guys are local to Nashville, it's just a little bit south of Nashville. It's a great group, great place to network, great place to learn, hear from an awesome speaker every month. But the thing that I love is, I love two things. It's totally free. We've tried to keep this group completely free just as a value add for people, and
sure,
have some great sponsors that help us make that happen. But people show up and meet each other and do deals, and it's an awesome thing. So we record each session. We've got a Facebook page where you can kind of watch them live if you're not local, and we also repurpose them on our YouTube page and on our podcast page. It's just called the Nashville Investors Podcast, but it's the same content that you would get if you show up live.
I love it, man. So tell everyone a little bit about what type of real estate investing do you focus on? Are you like a single family, commercial kind of guy, duplexes? What's your focus?
Yeah, anything 1 to 4 units, residential. I always just, kind of the Warren Buffett mentality of just invest in things that you understand. And for me, that's what we started in. That's what we understand. We understand how to make it work. We're not flippers. We're not, at least me and my wife personally are not flippers. People that will purchase a property for a really cheap price, fix it up, sell it for a higher value. That to me is not really real estate investing. That's more of that's a business. And it can be a great business if you do it well. It's just not that's when most people think of real estate, that's what they think of in terms of buy low, sell high.
Mm.
But really we're in it just for the long term, slow. It's not super sexy. You're making, off a single family rental, you may be making $200 to $300 a month cash flow. But when you look at the return being, 10 to sometimes 15% cash on cash return over a long period of time, and you have to do nothing for it because we work with property managers that manage these investments, it's a really great thing. And it has massive tax advantages too for people who need that.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful that you brought that up because I want to dive in a little bit more into that. A lot of people, when they talk about rentals and owning property and cash flow, they at least online, they make it sound really sexy and luxurious, but it really is just a lot of those one to $300 per unit or per home type of situations where you're paying everything off. So the cash flow from one or two units is not going to make you rich and make you financially retire, but if you do enough of them, it can.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's not a get rich quick scheme for sure. You gotta have the money to invest in it in the first place. So that's where having an active business, in whatever that could be. For me, it's been in music, and I've been thankful to have made a good life for us and our family doing that, and that's afforded us to invest in real estate. So you really have to have something. I don't really think there's a great no money down way to do it. There are ways where, you can invest time if somebody else has the money and you have basically can put in the sweat equity. But to me, time is money. So you're investing something regardless.
Yeah, you have to, right? And that's beautifully brought that up. It's either time or money. It's always either time or money. So when you're doing these particular deals, do you ever refinance it to get your money back out and to buy another one, or do you let the equity sit there, or how does that work?
In my strategy, where it's the 1 to 4 units, it's not so much of that. What you're referring to is a great strategy, though. The Bur Method is one way of looking at it. But you can basically buy a property and force appreciation by increasing, rents, increasing the quality of the property, so you can demand higher rent, better management. Converting the use of the building to something that's a higher use. And you can certainly do refinances. Most of where you're going to see the benefit of that is in big multifamily. And I've been a part of deals that do this. I just myself have not put syndicate. Like I've been a co-syndicator on a pretty large 300 unit apartment multifamily deal. But that's really what you kind of have to. That's the field you have to be playing in to really make that model work. And what that model is, just really quickly, since you brought it up, it's really powerful. You can buy a property, let's say for $1 million, it needs maybe $1 million of work. You've got $2 million on it, and then you have raised the value of the property based off of, because how properties are valued in that space is not by comps; they're based off of income and net income, really,
Mm-hmm.
income minus expenses. And so if you get the income up, that raises the market value of the property. So if you buy property, put $1 million in, raise the value to where the property is a $3 million property, you can refinance, pull out your equity. And most of the time, if you do it right, you can pull out all of the original investment and still be cash flowing. And you don't pay tax on it because it's debt.
Which is pretty wonderful.
It's a powerful way to do it. A lot of people, it's a lot of the higher ups in the financial world kind of got smart and figured this out. So there's not as much meat on the bone. A lot of these properties have been so value added at this point that, you know, this model's been done over and over again, but they're still out there. You just got to look a little bit harder.
So speaking of looking, how do you find your properties that you invest in? Is it on the MLS? Do you drive for dollars? Do you just get friends to tell you about it?
For me personally, it's really just network at this point. For real estate investing is very much a side hustle for me. It has to be minimum time investment for me, because when I'm not doing music, I just want to be with my family. And so I've gotten to the point with my property managers and brokers have been the best source of deals. Because, and a lot of the time the broker is a property manager. So it's really great when you can find one who is both, and they can source your deals and then they can also manage them for you. I'm also a big fan of turnkey operations, not all turnkey operations, but the good ones. I have 2 properties with one called Mid-South Home Buyers, which I highly recommend. It's a great place out of Memphis that when people think of Memphis, they think kind of, some people have a little bit of a ghetto perception of it, but they invest in good, you know, decent parts of town. They're not like war zones or anything, but basically it's just a great cash flow city. You can buy properties for anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 a property. So when you're factoring in financing, which is the other thing we haven't even got into, people will loan you money to buy these things. You may only have to put $10,000 to $20,000 down in a deal like this. The bank will finance the rest of it for you.
Yeah, which again, if you're buying real estate, I mean, that's the goal, is to do it with as small amount of money as possible, but it's still going to require some money. So you have whatever you're getting that money from. Again, if it's a job or another career of some sort, it's from savings or from some investment or from something. But then you can use that money, recycle that cash, and actually buy some property with it. Do you have a lot of those examples where you see people buying something with $10,000, $20,000 down and actually owning and being able to cash flow?
Yeah, all day long. I mean, I've done it myself several times. At this point, I have 20 units in our portfolio, which is, you know, we'd like to double that, but it's a great little monthly cash flow. I mean, we, just to give you, I guess, some real number examples, just looking inside the sausage factory, how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
If I can share some with you, maybe that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
So I'm just pulling up one of my statements that I get monthly. So for instance, last month, July, we'll just look at the end of month of July. So we've got 20 units. It's spread between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 separate properties. So some of them are single family, some of them are 4 units, some of them are 2 units. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So our net income, after our interest, after our principal payments, which is our loan payments, our accounting, our legal fees, our leasing fees, our insurance, our homeowners association, eviction costs, management fees, repairs and maintenance, our net for January through July on average was around $4,000 a month off of it. And when you look at what we put in to get those, we probably invested around $375,000 to date to get those.
Sure.
So that's over a 10% return. And the good news is on taxes, it shows up as basically having, lost money because of depreciation. So you're really paying no tax on that income as well too, which is a beautiful thing.
So depreciation on what? Explain that for people.
So let's say you buy a property, and maybe you can kind of type this along as you're doing, but depreciation, when you buy a residential property, you're allowed to depreciate it on your tax returns for up to 27, I think it's 27 and a half years. So let's say you buy a $100,000 property. You're going to divide that by 27 and a half. What is that going to end up being? That's
2,000 some change.
Yeah. 3,000, 36 is what I got. So basically, if you ended up netting $3,000 a year in cash flow, that would show as a loss of $600 on your taxes. So you're not going to owe any tax.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep, makes tons of sense.
So it's a really great way. A lot of people use the strategy of buy the most expensive property. This is the Donald Trump way, and why when Hillary Clinton said you don't pay your taxes, and he said that makes me smart, that's what he was talking about. It's all real estate depreciation.
Gotcha. Yep. And a lot of people, that's a really nifty and very cool strategy that a lot of people forget about. Is that something that you would suggest a CPA does, or is that something that you personally do yourself?
As far as the depreciation?
Yep.
Well, you can do, when you get up to, and I'm probably overdue to do it at this point, but Brandon Turner, who's coming to be with us, he actually just did one on his property portfolio last year. It's called a cost segregation study. So a cost segregation study, basically, when you look at the depreciation schedule on your tax return, it's broken down between land, the building itself, and there might be another category, but you're basically trying to get them to reallocate the amount, because if it's part of the building, you can basically depreciate it quicker. And I'm not a CPA, so I may be explaining some of this a little bit confusing. But the gist of it is, if you do a cost segregation study, you can often depreciate it a lot faster, which can mean saving tens of thousands of dollars on your taxes. And if you're, this is not offsetting active income unless you're a real estate professional, which means you spend at least 50% of your time on real estate related activities. The great loophole there is you can offset your passive losses, which is all this stuff we're talking about here, against your active income.
Sure.
So if you have a loss on your real estate side, which still could mean you're making money, you could offset your money you make at your W-2 job or whatever else you do. If you're investing in stocks, I mean, that's all technically capital gain. That's passive income. So it even cancels out your profits from that side, which is a great thing.
That is, and I really do appreciate you sharing the kind of real life perspective of that, because I think a lot of people, they love to skim over the actual specific details. And again, this is, I think, very achievable for a lot of people, because this took you the 20 units, 11 properties, 307,000. That took you like what, 3.5, 4 years, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, about approximately.
Yeah. And so that's incredible though. And again, a lot of people think, oh man, I could never do that. But it's like, you don't do that immediately. That's not something that you just go out and do right now, right away. You do it over time, you do it slowly. And then once you kind of build that up, like I said, over that 4 years, 4,000 a month. I mean, that's a lot. That's honestly what more than people making a month in their salary.
Yeah. I mean, you look up what is the average U.S. salary now? I mean, that's probably over that, you think?
Yep. I would think so. So 36,000, maybe something like that a year.
Yeah. So if I never do anything again, for work, that's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is incredible. And that is a massive benefit. So you said you're going to try to double that. So how would you go about where you are now? How do you 2X?
Yeah. So, well, for me personally, a lot of our investing has kind of gone into our music companies.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't poured a lot of gas on the real estate fire in the last couple of years. And a lot of that is just really, there are good times to invest, and they're bad. There's never really a bad time to invest, but there are better times to invest than others. I wouldn't say, at least in our market in Nashville, especially, unless you're investing in certain sort of niche types of investment classes, it's been really hard to find deals that just make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of invested more in business over the last couple of years, and then I think as the market sort of readjusts itself a little bit, because there definitely will be a correction at some point, a lot of investors are sitting on the sidelines, kind of just holding on to their portfolios and their cash, investing in their businesses, and then when the market corrects itself a little bit, they'll pour more back into the real estate side of things.
How do you determine the cities that you invest in, and are your 20 properties just here in Tennessee?
These are all in Tennessee. Some are in Nashville. Like I said, we used to buy in Nashville. I haven't bought anything here because we haven't found anything that's made sense in the past couple of years, or the cash flow that we look for. We have properties in Clarksville. We have some in Chattanooga, and we have some in Memphis. I'm not opposed to going out of state. I've taken investor field trips to Dallas. I've been to Belize to look at offshore property. I'm really not scared of investing somewhere else. The big thing that can make or break any of this is really your team of who's running it. I would say, for me, I probably would not invest in super small markets that are, maybe more than 30 or 40 minutes outside of a major city, because they're very dependent on maybe one or two sources of jobs. Like if you're in a small town where there's one factory and that's where all the jobs come from, factory closes down, you've all of a sudden got a big pool of people who are unemployed and will not be able to pay for rent. So
sure.
I like staying pretty close to major metropolitan areas. But the big thing for me is, do I trust the team? Is the team reputable? Have they been established? I've definitely had some nightmare horror stories with bad teams, and that's what makes or breaks an investment, even more than the property itself, is who's managing it.
So talk to me a little bit about managing and talk about that team. I know you mentioned a lot of it just comes from networking, but what do you look for in a property manager?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I like them to not be, brand new. There's nothing wrong with if everybody's got to start somewhere, but I like for them to have at least, 4 or 5 years of operating history at minimum.
Okay.
The percentage is probably the last thing that I ask, just because, whether it's a lot of them charge between 8 and 10%.
Yeah. They're going to take something. So it's like, okay.
Have to assume that. Are they good at communication? I mean, just basic human communication. Like, is it easy for you to get responses from them? Are they quick responses? Are they, efficient communicators? Or are they giving you information that you need, or are they giving you way too much information? Need some?
Yep.
Go that way. And so, yeah, those are a few things. I mean, it's just like it'd be like you just hiring, because they're working for you. You're not working for them. It'd just be like if you were hiring an employee. Like, what are the things that you would look for in a good employee? Communication. Are they smart? Do they invest themselves? That's a big one. Are they owner operators? That's a huge one. I like to work with people not only as property managers but CPAs. I mean, my CPA is a real estate investor themselves. My bookkeeper's a real estate investor herself. I like to work with people who eat their own cooking.
Right.
So they understand that they maybe have, half of their portfolio is their own properties, and then half of it is properties that they manage for other people. I mean, you get some benefits when you get into larger companies in terms of the systems and processes and monthly reporting, having it on the same day every month, knowing your reports are going to all just tie out, just basic accounting stuff. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times when, dealing with a bad property manager that we won't name, of me having to pay my bookkeeper to chase down what are these extra 10 pennies on a statement that don't tie out with what actually came in or went out.
Yeah.
And that's just cost to me. So those are the big things. I mean, just people that understand basic finance and are just easy to work with. And
I love it.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Very helpful. I appreciate you sharing that with me. You mentioned earlier about Nashville, the city of Nashville, maybe not being able to find anything recently that kind of met your numbers. Can you talk a little bit about your numbers? Like what is it that you look for?
Yeah. So criteria are going to be different for everybody. I mean, for me, when you talk about, well, let me just zoom out for a minute, because
Mm-hmm.
with real estate, there are kind of classes within real estate. There's like a D class property, which would be like a low end, low income, probably Section 8. There's C class, which is a little bit nicer, probably properties that were built between 1960 and 1980. B class, you're getting into a little bit nicer areas in the properties in the 90s and newer. And then A class is 2000s, pretty new construction, highest rents. So with all of these, you're going to see on paper the quote unquote monthly return go down. Like you may see some D class properties on paper that are showing a 25% cash on cash return.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to collect it with a gun, but you can certainly get your 25% return. C class, you may start getting into 15 to 20%. B class, you may get into 10 to 15% returns. And A class, generally what I've seen is sub 10% returns. But the trade-off is less volatility. There's just going to be a lot more management when you get into the D class properties. So that's where like hedge funds are pretty much always going to go for the A class, maybe some upper B class, because they're willing to take a lesser return in exchange for surety. And if you're any hedge fund out there and you're making 7-8% on your money, I mean, where else? And there's not a lot of places in the market that are giving you 10% returns. So they're thrilled to put their money in something that's doing that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah. So that's a good breakdown, the class property. So you kind of more focus on what, BCA kind of?
Not really A. I'm kind of somewhere between B and C.
Okay.
So we have, man, just looking through my sheet that I was going over my finances earlier. I mean, one of our best performing properties is probably it's a duplex that was probably built in 1988. So I'd call that kind of a B, mid B class. And that one we bought for $106,000, or no, $112,000, and it's bringing in, I want to say, $1,900 a month in rent.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I mean, it ends up being a really great return. So there is kind of like anything, there's kind of a sweet spot.
Yeah.
You don't want to be too much on the high end. I mean, I don't like to spend, if I'm in this kind of 1 to 4 unit, I don't want to be spending over like $150,000 on any one of these properties.
Understand. And that's a really, again, just appreciate you really sharing that information, the real life approach, because that's something that when you can find and actually see visually the numbers and what something happens, it makes it become more real. And I think that is, just tracking down that type of home in some cities might be a challenge, right? Like if it's in LA, you're not going to find anything for 112, but that does exist. And that's the thing that we have to remember as investors is the deal might not be right in front of your nose, but it's somewhere. And you then get to determine, do you want to do it at that spot, in that city? And maybe you should do some research, like you mentioned earlier, kind of find out the jobs, find out the education. For me, Seth, I love SEC schools. That's kind of like, I know them very well. I know that college is going to be around for a while, especially if it's Division I. So Nashville obviously falls in that category. Gainesville, Florida, from where I'm from, had some rental properties there. And so that's kind of my thing, is I know SEC school is going to be around. So do a lot of college education approach. Some people do the factories. I do the college route. And that just depends on what people like and what they know.
Yeah, college towns can be great places to invest in real estate, because typically you actually will probably be able to command a little more rent out of those, because a lot of them rent by the bedroom and not by the house.
Mm-hmm.
So you may be getting $500 per bedroom. If you can convert the attic to an extra bedroom, there's an extra.
That's all about that attic, man, for sure.
That's it.
Definitely. Do you do any short-term rentals? Speaking of that, do you ever, I mean, is that something that you do?
I personally don't. I don't necessarily discourage people from doing it. I think if you're looking to purchase property in a city like Nashville, it's really hot right now, or Austin, or any markets like that, you pretty much are going to have to do short-term rentals to make any cash flow on it. We haven't personally got into it because my personal investment philosophy, this is really what it all breaks down to, is what is your personal investment philosophy? For me, I want it to be investing in things that are basic human needs, that that are kind of recession proof, and take minimal time management. For me, short-term rentals don't really fit any of those criteria. A lot of what short-term rentals are is, you think about, it could be professional housing, it could be people relocating, it could be a lot of them are vacation, people are vacationing. And what's the first thing that gets slashed when a recession happens? Well, people are not going on vacation.
Yeah.
Companies are going to spend less on housing their employees, or they're just going to not be sending them as much remotely. So you have to ask yourself, if the property that you purchased as a short-term rental, if you had to convert it to long-term rental, is it still going to cash flow? Most of these properties, the answer is going to be no. And so that's why I've just never gone down that option. I know I've left a lot of money on the table, and we have friends in our group who are just killing it in that. But I don't know. For me, the security is pretty important, and you're also at the mercy of local government policy. And I never like to be dependent on the government for much of anything.
That's a really very important discussion. I don't think a lot of people focus on is that short-term rentals and the Airbnb, VRBO, whatever. A lot of it is local government or government ordinances that can really squash that easily. And we've seen that in Nashville, right? You can come up with, they can just randomly create it because it's new, it's brand new for the most part. And you have these organizations, hotels that really do not want these Airbnbs to come in, that they can really sway the local politics.
Yeah, you better believe that they are lobbying as hard as they can.
Oh man.
If you're JW Marriott, the last thing you want is Joe Schmo setting up shop, Airbnb, competing with you. So they've got significant firepower to influence local policy. And I just don't like to be beholden to that. It's basically like investing in the wild, wild west versus in something that's been long established.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of money to be made in the wild, wild west, but there's also a lot of potential risk there too.
Yes, absolutely agree. Man, that's really, really useful information. And this is good stuff. This is a big question. I think it's going to be a challenge to sum it up quickly, but you mentioned, investing, not the psychology, but the story, like why, what's your goal? How do you, or what would your opinion be on how one goes about creating that?
Yeah, your person, I call it, and I definitely didn't coin this term, and I don't think they did either, but I got it from the real estate guys, and they call it your personal investment philosophy.
Yep.
So this is how you make all of your investing decisions. This is number one. And we touched that, this being like literally the foundation. After that comes your market, after that comes your team, and after that comes your actual property. Most people start with the property.
Yeah.
And it's really the least important and most interchangeable part of this whole equation. So you've got to start with your personal investment philosophy. So some examples of that, a lot of that's going to depend on where you're at in life. How old are you? Are you nearing retirement? Are you young and can afford to have a little more risk? Basically, with real estate, there are 4 reasons you'd want to invest in it. Number 1 is cash flow. Number 2 is appreciation. Number 3 is your depreciation, which is your tax advantage. And the last part is that it's leverageable. You can borrow against it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your
4 reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So really, like, you kind of have to decide, number 4, are you a fan of using leverage? Is that part of the equation? That's going to affect the type of properties that you buy, because certain types of properties you're not going to be able to get great leverage on. Do you need the tax advantages? Like, are you in a really high income tax bracket where a lot of your money is coming from capital gains, and do you need some passive income or passive depreciation to offset that?
Mm-hmm.
How important is growth to you, appreciation? I always like to put this is just my philosophy, and what I try to steer people towards is, to me, number 2, the appreciation part, really, to me, is just the icing on the cake. And if you're depending on appreciation, it has to be something that you can force.
Yeah.
So buying a property that's mismanaged and putting better management in place, or driving up the rents. I mean, that's appreciation, but that's something you can control. I'm not talking about just buying it hoping that in a couple of years your neighbor's house is going to go up so yours is worth more. It's not that kind of appreciation. Number 1 is cash flow. That's exactly what it sounds like. Are you going to be netting positive? Some people are so growth minded that they may leave cash flow on the table and actually be operating in negative cash flow for a long time in trade-off of maybe being in a market or a type of house or asset that would appreciate more. Some people just want the tax advantages and are not that concerned with the cash flow. So they may have a property that just literally breaks even, as long as they're getting the tax advantage from it and it's a safe place to park their money. So those are kind of all factors that you have to take in consideration. Mm-hmm. In addition to, how much time do you want to spend on the investment? Do you have experience in it, or do you need to rely solely on other people? As far as the things you invest in, do you like to have pride of ownership? Like, for a lot of people, they might like investing in song catalogs or royalty catalogs because there's a pride of ownership saying, hey, I own a piece of the Beatles recording catalog, or whatever it is, for example.
Right.
With a C-class property or a B-class property, it's not something that you're going to go take your kids to and say, look at this thing. Or maybe you will. I actually think it's cool to take my kids there and say, hey, this is paying for X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But you're not taking them to see your Lamborghini dealership or whatever that you have. It's not the same kind of quote unquote pride of ownership that you toss around,
I love that. Do you ever deal with wholesalers, or do you find your deals yourself?
I've actually never had a successful transaction with a wholesaler, and that's not to say there aren't good ones out there. We work with a guy, there's a guy that comes to our group named Bill Allen, who's one of the most successful wholesalers in the Southeast. He actually has presented at our group a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
So he's great, but the vast majority of wholesalers get into it probably because they attended some seminar and said, this is the way that you get into real estate when you don't have any money. And, 99% of them never do anything other than take the classes and get the but they're out there. It's just, there's a whole lot more, tire kickers than there are people who are actually doing it well.
Well, I mean, because in wholesaling, like, they do pitch it as the no money down approach, but it's like, you're going to have to knock on doors, do phone calls, haggle with people, do sales yourself, negotiate. Like, you're on the front line. Like, that's one of the hardest roles of wholesaling. I mean, it doesn't matter if you email out brochures or email out letters, but you're wheeling and dealing, smiling and dialing to an extent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not as easy as a lot of the gurus kind of make it out to be. I mean, it's simple. It's very simple. I mean, the business model is great if you can do it, that you literally do not own, you never take possession of the property. You're an intermediary. And so you find a deal and then assign the contract and sell that contract to somebody else, to an investor. So I would put it in the same category as what we just talked about. I mean, building this portfolio has taken me definitely a few solid years. I think establishing yourself as a wholesaler is the same thing. You got to be willing to commit 3 to 5 years to it to see a return. And if that's not what you want to do with your life, then you got to ask yourself, is that a good road to go down in the first place?
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. Well, I know I had you for 45 minutes today, and I tried to get as much as I could out of you, so I think I did.
Yeah, I hope I added some value to the group.
You added some massive value. That was very, very beneficial. So thank you tremendously, because we have a lot of people. I mean, this is, a cash rich community where we love trading, we love investing, we love understanding and seeing numbers and just growing our money and having an incredible life so we can do amazing things for amazing people. So thank you.
Yeah, well, happy to be here, and I love everything you're doing. You guys are in amazing hands. Jeremy knows his stuff. You guys all know that. That's why you're here. So honored to call you a friend.
Yeah, likewise, Seth. Thanks so much, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, friends, family, traders from around the world. That is him, Mr. Seth Mosley. You can check him out either one of these websites. You got mminvestorsgroup.com, and then, of course, Full Circle Music. Both of those are also their own YouTube channels. So I would really suggest, if you want some very real, down-to-earth real estate information, visit mminvestorsgroup.com. Check them out on YouTube. Get their email. They do not spam you. It's very good information via email. I like being on their list. So I think this is great. And yeah, it's pretty much what we got. JL says, is the interview recorded? No, man. I decided recently just to stop recording any interview that I do, because I was like, why would anyone want to listen to this again twice? So that's just a one-time only thing, man. Anyway, for those who are listening either live or listening to this recording, thank you for being here and listening and watching. You guys are amazing, incredible. Appreciate your time, and have a wonderful day.